Shalom Aleichem Rabotai. These are the Mishnayot for Shabbat. I try to always record Bezrat Hashem, B'li Nether, the Mishnayot for Shabbat, Erev Shabbat, to make it available. So we are on the second day of Maasrot, continuing our study of the Mishnah Yomi with the third Mishnah. And this continues the theme yesterday about when fruits are ripe, when fruits are not yet ripe. This was the second klal, general rule about Meiser. When fruit is not ripe, it's not chayiv and meiser, so we have to know when it's ripe, when it's considered edible, considered ochel. So Mishnah Gimel, hecharuvin, the carobs, mi sheyinakedu. It's when they get little spots. They get little spots on them, you know they're food. Kol shachorim, anything that turns dark, mi sheyinakedu. Once it gets dark spots, it's considered edible. Ha'agosim, pears, krustumlin. This is apparently a kind of a wild pear or gallnut-shaped thing. The hakrishim, the quinces. Va'uzrodin, the famous sorb apples, perhaps crab apples. Mi sheyikorechu, when they go bald. So apparently they come out with a little bit of sort of a furriness to them, like we see commonly on peaches, a little bit of a furriness. Once they get bald spots, they are edible. Kol halavonim, all of the lighter, whiter fruits, mishikarechu. So too, if they have this little fuzz on them, once they get bald spots, they are edible. Hatilton, the fenugreek, that was famous from a whole fenugreek day a little while ago in Trumot. Mishetitzameach, when it would sprout. So apparently, the fenugreek seeds are what we're using. So when the seeds are big enough and ripe enough that if you put them in water, they would themselves sprout into new plants, then they are also considered edible. Hatzvua v'zaitim, and grains and olives, mishiyachnisu shlish, when they have entered 1/3. We've mentioned this by Shvit and by Trumot. This 1/3 measure is 1/3 of the full growth. And back then, when people were very out in the fields, very familiar with how big their produce got, they could tell by eyeballing it what their shlish, what their 1/3 of the full growth was. The Bartner brings another pshat that by things like zaitim and navim, it would be when you're sochet, when you squeeze them out. So if you would squeeze it now and get 1/3 of the juice, 1/3 of the volume of the oil out, then that's reached 1/3 of maturity. Good. Mishnah Dalid, uviyarek, and by vegetables, hakishuim, the cucumbers, hadiluim, gourds, avtichim, melons. Avtiach is commonly a watermelon in modern Hebrew. Melafafonot, and the melafafon are the little cucumbers. The small ones are a distinct species with a distinct taste from the large ones. Hatapuchim, apples, ve'etrogim, and the famous etrog. Chayavin gedolim v'ketanim. They're chayav whether they are large or small. They are a vegetable. Now you might be a little upset about that last one. How is an esrog a vegetable? It's a little bit strange. Now there's a Gemara in Rosh Hashanah that discusses, it's actually a machlokis, if the tithing of an esrog is like a fruit or like a vegetable, because it stays on the tree from year to year. It's pre-eitz hadar. Now, hadar means glory, is beautiful, but hadar also means that lives, that stays, that resides on the tree from year to year. So the esrog is a bit vegetable-like, so it could be considered a vegetable. But the Mishnah continues, Rabbi Shimon poter et etrogim bekotnan. Rabbi Shimon says, no, it's really like a fruit. You have to wait until it's a gadol, not when it's a kotan, like a vegetable. Hachayev b'shkedim amarim, what's chayev and meiser among the bitter olives, poter bimtukim, is potter in the sweet olives. Chachayev bimtukim, potter b'marim. What's chayev in sweet olives is potter in bitter olives. So the Rav Bartner explains, when we say bitter olives, we mean when they get full grown and they're fully developed, they're bitter and people don't eat them. They're not considered food. But when they're still small, they're very sweet and they're considered edible. So when they're all the way large, they're no good. But when they're small, you still eat them. They're chayiv and meiser. And it's the opposite by the metukim. These are metukim when they're fully grown, that they're inedible when they're small, and they're only edible once they're grown. So they have opposites. It's interesting. There's a similar concept like this by the bird offerings. The Tur and the Bnei Yonah It's usually translated the doves and the turtle doves. These are actually different species, and the Gemara explains it's not always realized that they're different species. And the Gemara explains when one is at the age where one is eligible to be a carbon, the other one can't be a carbon. And then when they get older, the Bnei Yonah, they grow up, they're no longer eligible to be a carbon, but the turtle dove, can be a carbon. So almonds and turtle doves have this similarity in halacha. So that's a great trivia question for the Shabbos table. Rabosai, have an excellent Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom Mevarach.